It's April, spring is officially here. It's been a long, hard winter, hasn't it? But with the high temperatures and more light, my plants are definitely responding. And that means there is always something to be done. So let me show you the things that I'm getting on with and why. And we're starting with a brand new shelf. So as you know, I'm always trying to find new ways to display plants in my home. Can't be planty enough, much to Mrs. Sheffield's bemusement. So my latest addition is this nice long shelf that I've had put up above this TV unit. So I'm not very DIY savvy, so I did get someone else to do it for me to make sure it was all level and all that kind of stuff. So that's a 3-meter shelf, and I think it's going to really fill in that space beautifully, isn't it? So the idea being is that the majority of the plants that I'm going to put up here are going to be the trailing variety. So they're going to trail nicely over the shelf and into this space here. So it's going to be quite nice, I think. So I need to pick some plants out of my collection that are going to go up here, and I might buy a couple more as well from the shop just to spice things up. The challenge I've got though is that, particularly on this end, it's a good 2 or 3 meters away from the nearest window. So there's a bit of a dark spot up here, but I think it should be okay because I've got a grow light there. It's a floor lamp with a 36 watt Sansi grow bulb shining over there, so probably up to there is decent light. And then over there's a bit darker, so I just need to find some plants that don't necessarily mind being in lower light too much. Okay, so I think that'll do it for now, at least anyway. Not the most ideal plants up here, but I haven't really got that many trailing plants, and particularly ones that can tolerate lower light. So I quite like this, the satin pothos. This is a very leggy plant that lived over there. Wasn't getting enough light on these strands here, these stems here. But I think it looks quite interesting in this position, just draping down. It's quite elegant. So we'll see how it copes. Same with this peperomia here. So that needs a lot of light, which is why I've got that up against the Sansi grow light, as does the Gollum jade. That needs a lot of light. I think that looks quite nice there. This is a nice plant, philodendron. So as that continues to grow, that'll drape down very nicely. Triscanthia is not ideal, so I probably will end up changing that because the variegation will probably start to go by the wayside in this position, not getting enough light. This Califea, that should be okay there. Doesn't seem to mind low light so much. None of these plants are going to thrive, by the way. They're just going to tolerate living up here, but that's a compromise I'm willing to make. The Syngonium doesn't seem to mind lower light. Probably won't thrive, but hopefully it'll just be okay there. The Monstera definitely won't be happy, but it's only a little one really. I just wanted something to fill that space. I probably will end up changing that. I've got another peperomia, 2 peperomias. Peperomia obtusifolia at the end. I wanted something quite small to kind of bookend the end of the shelf. Probably won't be that happy there, but we'll keep an eye on it. So overall, I think it looks much nicer than it did before. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you're a subscriber to the channel, then you'll know just how much I love the Chinese money plant. I really do love it. But I took a propagation of the one that I had, really leggy plant, just chopped his head off basically and put it into water, and it's grown roots really quickly. Look at that root system. Tons and tons of roots. So that is ready to be potted up. It's only taken maybe 2 weeks for it to root up. So I've got my good old tray here. So I'm remembering to use my tray this time rather than getting it all over my table. So I've got a clear plastic pot. I do like using these on the whole because I can keep track of how the roots are growing. So all I'm going to do is hold my plant more or less where I want it to be, and then just dump the soil in. And there she is. So I've got a little decorative pot here, handily. So you do always want to water in any repotting or any potting of cuttings that you do want to give it a good drink, just so that the soil has good contact with roots. That's what you want. You want to get rid of the air gaps in the soil. So this guy has grown water roots essentially, because it was developing its root system in the glass of water. So soil is obviously dry, so there's a bit of an adaptation period for Mr. Chinese Money Plant Jr. So that means we just need to keep on top of making sure that the soil is nice and moist for the first 2 or 3 weeks, just so it doesn't dry out. And it'll grow on successfully from there. So the days are getting longer, thankfully, and the temperatures are rising, but that means that we can often fall into the trap of just watering more blindly. So we kind of just assume that our plants are drying out quicker, so we can maybe water them twice a week instead of once a week, and we do that blindly, and then we end up with problems with root rot from overwatering. So I always bleat on in my channel, pretty much every single video, is to check the soil before you water. Please do it. So there's a couple of ways you can do that, of course. My favourite method at the moment, because it's nice and quick and simple, is just to pick him up and feel how light he is. So it kind of requires you to get to know your plant a little bit, let him become your best friend and all that. And this guy's feeling quite light. So I recently moved him. He was in a darker spot in my living room. I moved him here on this dining table. So he's now getting sun for pretty much all day. And he's drying up more quickly than he used to, but I still check every time. So he's feeling light. And then just to confirm, you could go in with either your finger or the world's best invention, the moisture meter. And he's reading 3 on the moisture meter. So it's a scale of 1 to 10, so he's 3. So he's just on the verge of dry and moist. So I reckon that is perfect timing for me to give him a little drink. So I do like to bottom water my Dracaena. So I'm adding about a quarter, a third of water up to the pot. Do that, set him back down, and the water will wick up nicely and get an even drink. All the roots will be evenly hydrated. So I think it's been a while since I did go around and check all my plants. So I think a few of them do need a drink. Do make sure that you download my Plant Problems Troubleshooting Handbook that you can get completely for free with the link in the description. It's been downloaded by thousands of plant parents the world over. It'll help you diagnose your plant problems, see why they're happening and what you can do about it. So make sure you get your copy now. I'm thinking that I want a couple of Monstera adansonii to trail off my shelf that I've got above my TV unit. I think that will look quite nice. So I've got this Monstera adansonii on this trellis trellis. I think I'm going to take a cutting of a couple of free plants. So you can propagate all year long, but spring is the best time really, because plants bounce back quickly, new stems will grow and roots will grow super fast as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut right here on this stem in between those 2 leaf nodes. And this guy is attached to this trellis trellis, so I'm going to have to prise him off gently. There we go. There we go. So I've got, I think, 3 or 4 plants. I'm going to show you how to prep these now. So it's a dead easy process to process these cuttings. So we have 3 established leaves and we have 1 developing at the top. So I think we'll get 3 cuttings out of this. So the node, which is basically where the leaf comes out of the stem, if we cut around there, then that's where the roots are going to emerge. That's where all the root making magic happens. All we need to do is just cut in between each leaf node, like so. So we've got 3 individual cuttings. So we'll get roots around here, and then eventually a new stem will grow from there, and we'll have a brand new plant in our hands. So if you wanted, you could just tidy that up a little bit, just making it a little bit shorter, but no big deal. So we can propagate in any medium we want, really. I like to use water or a perlite prop box, but in this case I'm going to use water. Just pop them in like so, and they will develop roots within maybe 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. So it's good that these have aerial roots already established on the stem, so these will turn into the root system basically. So we're already halfway there, so I know these are gonna be successful. So I'm gonna pop that into there. And then this guy, because it's a top cutting, I've not cut the head off basically, this should just continue growing once it's developed roots. Well, I need to grow a new stem because the stem is still in place at the top. So that will eventually, this leaf will continue to grow, and it'll just go on and on and on. So I don't need to do anything with that. I can pop that in there like so. So I'm gonna pop that somewhere nice and bright, and it'll develop roots in a couple of weeks, and then pot them on into soil or whatever you choose. So a bit of a cautionary tale now. So if you're a subscriber to the channel, then you will have seen my large Philodendron verrucosum on a moss pod. It used to live up there. And the problem with these guys is they grow quite rapidly, quite tall, quite quickly. So it had more or less reached the top of the ceiling. And moss poles, these particular moss poles, plastic poles filled with moss, and they're stackable, so you can keep stacking so that the plant can continue to climb. And the idea being, when they reach the top, you're meant to cut the plant lower down, which is what I've done for this guy. Cut it down, and then take the top piece off, plant that into a pot, and then continue stacking. But it doesn't look like this guy appreciated it too much. Very droopy leaves. So the mother plant is still okay. She's living in my conservatory. And there's already 3 or 4 new growth points emerging. So that seems to be okay. But this guy, I think the problem was, and I mentioned it in a recent video when I slagged off moss poles, is that the aerial roots haven't grown into the moss sufficiently. So there's not enough root mass in here to support the growth of all these leaves. So there's a new growth point here that's looking quite floppy. So basically I'm hoping I haven't killed this plant. So what I think I might do is just get the snippers out, and just to ease the pressure on this plant, I'm going to remove that lower leaf and that lower leaf. So I'm going to leave it with 1 leaf for it to photosynthesize and a new leaf that's coming out. Less moisture loss through the leaves because I cut 2 leaves off, and hopefully roots will start to grow into here, and hopefully it will start to bounce back. Alright, so I've got my coleus. Can you see me? I've got my coleus here that I know lots and lots of folks are really enamoured with on the channel because they love the colour of the foliage. I'm not sure what type of coleus it is. It was given to me as a gift, so I've no idea. I've tried looking at what the variety is, but no luck so far. But beautiful colour on the leaves. So I'm not happy with how he looks basically. He's a bit of a straggly, semi-lanky mess. And it's always the way with coleus in my experience. Over winter they're not getting enough light. So the leaves start to come out a bit small. Like that. A little bit too small for my liking. They should be nice and big like that. As a comparison. So it tends to grow little small leaves like that in the winter because there's not enough light. They tend to be a bit off colour as well. Too much green in that. It needs to be a lot redder. So, I mean, I could let it continue growing, and it will grow really quickly, but it might be a bit of a lanky, top-heavy mess. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the unthinkable, which is to completely reset it. By doing that. Woo, look at that. Chopped its head off. because the coleus is a rapid grower. I have no concerns about it putting on a growth spurt over summer. And by midsummer, it'll be a nice happy plant. So there's a stem here that is way too lanky. So I'm going to cut that back as well. Like so. Come on. This one here. This one has grown a long stem. Cut that off, cut that back, cut that back. Don't need to worry too much about pruning. So I do know it looks drastic. You're probably pulling your hair out at home watching me do this to my poor coleus. But it will bounce back. This stem, I know, will grow really long and I will have to cut that back. In fact, I might get that to branch out by just chopping the head off. I'll cut that. So yeah, lots of stems will grow. There'll be 2 or 3 stems growing from there, from there, from there, from there. And then as it grows, you just keep cutting it back and it'll keep branching out. Always branches out into 2. You can probably see that on this stem here. I made a previous cut here and it's branched out into these 2 new stems. It always does that without fail. So I'm gonna put that somewhere nice and sunny. It needs as much sun as possible and it'll grow on very happily. Now that it's getting lighter and warmer, I've started to notice that my rubber plants or Ficus elastica plants are starting to grow again. These plants tend to go dormant in the winter and then wake up in spring, and they go quite quickly if you give them enough light in spring and summer. So if you have a rubber plant at home, then you'll know all about the sheaths that they drop from the newly emerging leaves. They normally drop onto the soil line. So I've got a couple here already. So this applies to pretty much all of my plants, but if there's debris on the soil line of your plants like there is here, then I like to go through regularly and just remove them, pick them up and put them in the bin or the compost pile, whatever. And I just make sure that the soil line and the plant itself around the crown is getting good airflow. And I just prevent things like fungus and mold taking hold in your soil line. So you always want good airflow, and if you have a massive pile of these leaves on the soil line, that's going to prohibit that. You might think they might decompose onto the soil line, but because we're indoors, it's going to take an awfully long time compared to the great outdoors. So it's a good idea to remove these. The Pothos Marble Queen is probably my top 5 favourite houseplant because I love the leaves, basically. The variegation on the leaves. Beautiful plant. It's quite tricky to look after because it's so heavily variegated with big patches of white, they do tend to die off because they haven't got that much chlorophyll to photosynthesize. But I think I've only got one of these in my collection. I think that's the case. Yeah. I've only got one. I think I've tried propagating before. I didn't get that much success because of the highly variegated leaves. But we'll try again and see if we can get more of these plants because I want to add one of these to my my new shelf that I've got above my TV unit. So I've got just trying to locate a couple of good stems to take. Don't need to be too precious about it. So this one looks quite good. I'll explain why once I've made the cut. So I'm going to cut there. So, oh, that leaf's a bit ropey. So I chose this stem because it's got more green than the rest of the plant. So it should be able to photosynthesize. And when you're dealing with cuttings, you just want to make sure that the leaves are healthy. If they're starting to go crispy brown, then probably not going to be the healthiest. So that one I'm anticipating will die off quite quickly and probably won't be successful in growing roots, but I'll keep it nonetheless and see what happens. So as with the Adansonia I did earlier, just cutting in between the leaf nodes. Got a node there without a leaf. which is unusual. And I'll leave that with 2. So I've got 3 cuttings again that I think are very viable, and then that one's a bit iffy. So I've got my glass of water, we can mix and match. So I've got my glass of water with my Adansonii cuttings, and we can just pop these in. So these will rest nicely on the top, hopefully. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the beauty of doing pothos cuttings, that I think pothos, I think it's the case with Marble Queen, apparently have a hormone that will speed up the propagation of the other cuttings that you have in the water. It will release some sort of hormone into the water that will speed up propagation for all of the cuttings. So we'll see if that works. So that's just resting on there. So you just want the stem to be in water, not the leaves. Otherwise the leaves might rot and die. Okay, so there are those cuttings ready. Again, somewhere nice and bright, and we'll have 3 new plants. Spring is the time to keep a beady eye on your plants to make sure that there's nothing naughty going on, particularly with the light coming in, stronger light in spring and summer. You just don't want your plants to burn to a crisp, and also you can look at the plants that are in lower light and see if you can move them to brighter light spots. So as a bit of an experiment, I moved this begonia red flame to this brighter spot to see if it could handle full sun. It used to live over there, so it used to get medium light, now it's getting bright light with a few hours of direct sun on its leaves. And to be honest, it's not really handling it that well. So we've had good weather the last few days here in Sheffield, nice and sunny for the last few days, so that's given me a good chance to kind of assess how this plant is doing, to see if I need to move it before summer hits. And I think I do, because there's a few crispy leaves that are starting to appear and it's looking quite droopy, and I'm having to water it much more often than normal, maybe like every 2 or 3 days. So I think I'm going to have to move that guy. And then I've got a Schismata glottis here, which is quite similar to a peace lily, I find. Doesn't like to dry out too much. Beautiful plant when I got it, but unfortunately I put it in the wrong spot. I think put it in this sunny spot here, and the leaves have just gone by the wayside one by one. They're going yellow, crispy brown, and just dying off. So this plant, before it continues its downfall, I'm going to move it to a less sunny spot. So this snake plant was just living around the corner there. It was in quite a low light spot. And I've never really treated this snake plant with respect. He's always lived in a low light spot in my old house, in my new house as well. And I want him to grow on to be the stallion that he's destined to become. So I'm gonna give him lots of light now. And I've chosen this spot right here. So this is a door to my garden, but it very rarely gets opened, so we don't need to worry about that. So you can plonk them down like that, but I find if you just put a plant on the floor like that, it looks a bit rubbish, doesn't it? So I recently purchased this nice little plant stand. This is from TK Maxx, a great store for plant accessories if you're based in the UK. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pop that there like so. I'm going to put him on there, and he looks much nicer now. So he's going to get a good few hours of afternoon sun. He's going to be much happier. Well, I am fast running out of bright spots in my home. My conservatory is chock full of plants. All the good spots are taken up. And I've got a couple of plants here that do like lots of light. My Tradescantia teddy bear vine, which is like a furry Tradescantia, very nice. And a Pothos enjoy. This is one I propagated recently over the winter. So I haven't got sunny spots, but what I do have is lots and lots of Santi grow lights. So I've got a spot here that is just perfect for these 2 plants. I'm going to put that one there and that one there. So there's a 3-head Santi grow light here shining down on these plants, as well as this 1-head Santi grow light shining over these snake plants, etc. So all of these plants now got good bright light. So this fiddle leaf fig is another plant that I've neglected for too long. I've always had him in a bit of a low light spot. He's not really that happy about it, because these can grow quite quickly, can't they? But not if they're in low light. So I'm going to move him next to this Pothos Devil's Ivy. I've got a little plant stand just to lift him off the floor a little bit. See how he looks there. So this guy should be much happier. Should put on a bit of a growth spurt now that he's getting a few hours of afternoon sun. The next potting on that I need to be getting on with is my Monstera albo. So I'm dead pleased with this, because Monstera albos, I think they're still expensive. There was a time when they were worth hundreds, if not thousands of pounds. But I got one for free from an unboxing video I did last year. And chopped his head off, rooted him, and he's growing these quite interesting roots, all tied up in knots for some reason. Not sure why that is, all kind of growing into each other. But you want to pot up when the roots are a good couple of inches in length. I think these are, even though they're all tied up a little bit. So that's when you can ensure success. So I just want to pot these guys up basically. So let's get my tray again. Almost forgot, like I always do. Again, got my old clear plastic pot. And I'm going to hold it where I want it to be and then just dump soil around again. Okay, so I'm trying not to bury the stem too much, because if you do that, then there's a chance they might rot in the wet soil. But there's a bit of a trade-off because the cutting is a little bit wobbly in his new home, but that's mainly because he's not got an extensive root system, so he's not really anchored in the soil yet. But as you know, or as you probably know, Monstera roots are one of the quickest to grow. They go absolutely rampant when they're given half the chance. So it won't be long before the roots start to fill out this pot and he'll be well anchored in his new home. So I've got a nice kind of mustardy pot here. Pop him in there. He looks pretty good, doesn't he? So you can probably tell that I am falling out of love with moss poles a little bit. They're just a bit too much hard work than maybe the benefits that they give. But this guy is one of the rare success stories of a plant in my house living happily on a moss pole. So this is the Pothos Devil's Ivy. I think it's a Devil's Ivy. It looks more like a marble queen. Let me know in the comments which one you think it is. But now that the temperatures are rising and it's getting brighter, and this guy is living in a very sunny spot. It's normally turned around with the leaves facing the light. And this spot gets lots of afternoon sun. So it's getting a good maybe 7 hours of afternoon sun. But I'm always finding that I'm coming through maybe every 3 days. And it's drying out, particularly on top. You can expect that a little bit because that's the one that's getting the air the most. But even through here, it's not as damp as I want it to be. So I'm having to go through every maybe 2 or 3 days and just topping up my moss bowls with water. So that's what I'm going to do now. Well, that's it for this video. There's plenty to be getting on with, isn't there? But do make sure you enjoy it. For the rest of the videos in this series, check out the link over here and I'll see you there.